fall is here. The harvest is in. And here it is, a sight familiar to almost every gardener, a person with a spade, methodically turning over clods of soil. It's a ritual passed down through generations. Our grandparents dug, our parents dug, and we keep digging. But have you ever stopped to wonder why? Is this truly beneficial for the soil? Or are we making the same costly mistake year after year, potentially damaging our own plots? Today, we're putting those old habits aside and looking at fall tilling under the microscope of science. I promise you, by the end of this video, you will know whether your shovel is a tool of creation or an instrument of destruction. By the way, do you dig or do you skip it? Let me know in the comments right now, and we'll see if your opinion changes by the end of the video. Let's take a minute to go back in time. Where exactly did this tradition of deep fall tilling come from? Back in the Soviet era, when garden plots were the main source of food for many families, this method was considered practically the only way to go. First, it was the primary way to fight perennial weeds, like tenacious couch grass. Without modern herbicides, the spade was their main weapon. Second, this was how they incorporated the main fertilizer, manure. You had to bury it deep so it could really work for the next harvest. And third, the prevailing belief was that leaving large clods of soil exposed over winter allowed them to freeze solid, killing off pests and improving the structure of heavy clay soil. Sounds logical, right? These three pillars, weeds, fertilizer and pests, form the entire ideology behind fall tilling. But soil science hasn't stood still, and today we know a whole lot more about the life right beneath our feet. Let's start with the main argument put forth by those who favour digging: aeration. When the spade penetrates the soil, compacted throughout the summer, it loosens up the earth and breaks apart those hard clumps. This process saturates the ground with oxygen. Why is this necessary? The answer is straightforward. Plant roots, just like us, need to breathe. Oxygen is absolutely vital for their proper growth and development. In dense, tightly packed soil, oxygen levels are critically low. Plants begin to struggle, they poorly absorb nutrients, and the inevitable consequence is a meagre harvest. Tilling the soil is essentially a breath of fresh air for the garden to come. Imagine the dry, cracked earth after a scorching summer. The spade transforms that lifeless crust into a loose, breathable medium. Rainwater and snowmelt won't pool on the surface. Instead, they will easily penetrate deep into the ground, creating a vital moisture reserve for the spring. On the face of it, this is an undeniable benefit that justifies all the hard work. After all, we are giving the soil a chance to breathe deeply. Let's take a deeper dive into the topic of aeration. Oxygen isn't just for the roots. Beneath the surface, the soil is teeming with invisible life. Billions of aerobic bacteria, our greatest allies, are constantly hard at work. They are the ones breaking down organic matter and converting it into essential nutrients that plants can readily absorb. Without oxygen, these crucial microorganisms die off, and the decomposition process grinds to a halt. That's when putrefaction begins, driven by different anaerobic bacteria. These harmful microbes release toxic substances, such as hydrogen sulfide, which poisons our plants. That's why, when we loosen or aerate the soil, we are creating ideal conditions for this beneficial microflora. It's like opening a window to air out a stale room. Everything instantly comes back to life. Deep tillage ensures that air reaches the layers of soil where it wouldn't normally penetrate. This stimulates the activity of beneficial microbes deep down, helping to create a powerful, rich, fertile layer. In essence, the shovel in your hand becomes a powerful tool that initiates and accelerates the natural process of building soil fertility. Now let's get to the most compelling argument from those who oppose traditional digging: the destruction of the soil structure. Sure, we loosen the soil, but at what cost? Imagine the soil isn't just a simple mix of sand, clay, and organic matter. It's an incredibly complex living system, a sophisticated natural architecture. Over years, trillions of microscopic channels and pores penetrate this structure. These are created by decaying roots, earthworm tunnels, and the movement of other soil life. This forms a natural, highly efficient capillary system. This network acts like a series of blood vessels, drawing moisture up from the deep soil to plant roots during dry spells and efficiently draining excess water when it rains. What happens when the shovel comes in? It mercilessly destroys this unique, naturally created structure. When we turn that soil over, this entire delicate capillary network is instantly ruptured. The soil is instantly converted into a chaotic mass. Yes, it looks loose right after digging, but after the first heavy rain, that soil settles, compacts, and solidifies into a dense block, making it even harder and more impenetrable than it was before we started. Nature will spend years trying to rebuild what we destroyed in a single afternoon. Let's continue discussing the damage caused by disrupting soil structure. Let's take a closer look at these crucial soil capillaries. Why are they so important? This system acts just like the wick in a kerosene lamp. It uses capillary action to pull moisture up from the lower soil layers, feeding the root zone even when the surface is bone dry. This is nature's automatic watering system, which essentially saves our plants during dry spells. But when we start digging or tilling, we sever this vital wick. The topsoil, cut off from its deep moisture supply, dries out much faster. As a result, we have to water our gardens far more frequently, wasting both water and our own effort. Furthermore, a disturbed structure is simply terrible at retaining moisture. Loose, unstructured soil might saturate quickly after a rain, but it gives that water back up just as fast, through rapid surface evaporation. Structural soil, however, acts like a dense natural sponge. It soaks up a large amount of moisture and releases it gradually. This creates a real paradox. We till the soil believing we are improving its water and air balance, when in fact, we are severely deteriorating those conditions in the long term. Now let's look at the arguments in favour of digging. Weed control. This is perhaps the number one reason people grab their shovels in the fall. We are primarily talking about persistent, perennial, rhizomatous weeds such as quackgrass, goutweed, and thistle. Their powerful root systems dive deep into the soil and can survive even the harshest winters. Autumn tilling exposes these roots, bringing them right up to the surface. Stripped of the protective soil layer, they dry out in the wind and freeze solid with the first hard frost. This is a highly effective, chemical-free way to clear your plot of these aggressive invaders. Come spring, you will notice a significant reduction in weeds. The shovel in this context acts like a small plough, lifting the enemy out of its hiding place and leaving it defenceless on the battlefield. Furthermore, when we dig, we naturally chop the root systems into pieces. Many gardeners worry this promotes propagation, but if done in the autumn, these weakened, severed root sections don't have enough time to establish themselves before the winter deep freeze, ensuring they die off completely. Let's take a closer look at the mechanics of serious weed removal. Not all weeds fear the shovel equally, but for specific types, tilling is a death sentence. Take quackgrass, for instance. Its strength lies in its horizontally positioned white rhizomes, which are packed with dormant buds. Autumn tilling brings these rhizomes up to the surface. Frost is essentially ice crystal formation, which ruptures the plant's delicate tissues at a cellular level. Once exposed to the air, the quackgrass rhizomes are completely vulnerable to this process. The same principle applies to the roots of tap-rooted weeds like dandelions or dock. Their central tap roots, once brought to the surface, will freeze solid and die. Now here's a crucial tip. For maximum effectiveness, do not rake or smooth the soil after tilling. You need to leave large clumps intact. This dramatically increases the surface area exposed to freezing temperatures and prevents the weed roots from burying themselves back into the soil. So, if your main headache is a serious perennial infestation, autumn tilling might just be your most reliable ally in this uneven battle for a successful harvest. But there's a flip side to the coin. Opponents of turning the soil often argue, you are fighting the visible enemy, but you are waking up thousands of dormant seeds. What exactly does that mean? In the upper layers of the soil, we find what's known as the seed bank. These are the seeds of annual weeds like lamb's quarters, chickweed, pigweed, and many others that dropped onto the ground throughout the growing season. Over the years, tens of thousands of these seeds can accumulate in just 1 cubic metre of soil. As long as these seeds remain buried deeper than 5 to 7 centimetres, they stay dormant. They lack the light and sufficient warmth needed to germinate. They can lie dormant for years, simply waiting for their moment, and that's when we come along with a shovel. By turning over the soil, we lift these seeds from the depths right up to the surface. We are essentially creating the perfect environment for them to germinate in the spring. The result is that yes, we may have eliminated some of the quack grass or couch grass, but in exchange, we get a thick carpet of annual weeds we'll have to battle all next season. So, we end up solving one problem, but creating another, equally serious one. The concept of the soil seed bank is absolutely central to the whole debate surrounding digging or tilling. Think of it like a layered cake. The very top layer contains this year's seeds. Below that are last year's, and even deeper are the seeds from 2 or 3 years ago. Nature is clever. It prevents all those seeds from germinating at the same time. This is essentially a mechanism for species survival. If every single weed germinated in the same year, and we diligently pulled them out, they would effectively disappear. But thanks to this persistent seed bank, they maintain a practically endless supply for regeneration. The no-dig strategy is built upon a very simple principle. Don't disturb what is sleeping. If we avoid turning the soil over, those weed seeds remain dormant deep down, staying cool and dark. Crucially, they don't receive the light and warmth signal needed to germinate, and the few seeds that manage to remain right near the surface can be easily handled through shallow hoeing or by smothering them with thick mulch. So, choosing not to dig isn't about laziness. It's a conscious, long-term strategy designed to deplete the soil's weed seed bank. With every year you practice no-dig, you will notice fewer and fewer weeds appearing in your beds. Another powerful argument in favour is pest control. Soil isn't just a home for beneficial microbes, it's also the winter refuge for many of our garden enemies. Chafer grubs, wireworms, cutworm pupae, cabbage moth pupae, and the Colorado potato beetle itself. All these pests overwinter deep in the soil, burrowing down anywhere from 10 to 50 centimetres. Down at that depth, they are safe even from severe frost. However, autumn tilling spells absolute disaster for them. We destroy their winter sanctuaries and drag them, sleepy and defenceless, up to the surface. Here, they face a twofold danger. First, the frost. The larvae and pupae, not adapted to the low temperatures on the surface, quickly perish. Second, the birds. Tits, sparrows and other feathered helpers will happily feast in your newly dug garden, snatching up this valuable source of protein. Thus, a single autumn procedure can drastically reduce the pest population for the following year, minimising your need for insecticides. Let's take a closer look at what happens during this process. When we turn over the soil, we bring up pests like the May beetle grub. These large, white, juicy grubs become easy targets, a perfect meal for birds. The wireworm, which looks like a tough piece of wire, is harder to spot, but it becomes just as vulnerable. Its strong, chitinous shell offers no protection against freezing temperatures when exposed to the open air. Even butterfly pupae, which often look like tiny mummies, lose their vital shelter and simply crack when the frost hits them. It's truly like a deep, full cleaning session where you shake out all the rugs. We disrupt the pest life cycle at their most vulnerable moment, right before they settle in for the winter. This is a mechanical form of pest control that, unlike chemical spraying, is entirely safe for us and for the future harvest. Proponents of this technique rightly argue that it is far better to put in the work with a shovel once in the fall than to spend the entire next summer battling the resulting infestation and dousing your plants in harsh chemicals. But let's take a look at this from the opposite side. Who else are we bringing to the surface and exposing to the frost alongside those pests? Our greatest friends and allies, the humble earthworm. These tireless workers are the genuine engineers of soil fertility. They loosen the ground far more effectively than any spade, establishing those precious channels necessary for air and water flow. They pull surface organic matter deep underground, process the material, and enrich the soil with their castings, those invaluable, all-natural fertilizers. For them, autumn tilling is nothing short of an apocalypse. First, and most obviously, the blade of the shovel simply chops them into pieces. Secondly, any survivors are tossed onto the surface, making them easy targets for birds, or leaving them to die from exposure, cold, or dehydration. By wiping out the earthworm population, we strip the soil of its inherent, natural restorative power. We essentially take over their job, a job they did for free and far more effectively than we ever could. In essence, we are firing our best, most efficient workers and then trying to do their complex job ourselves and doing it incredibly poorly. However, earthworms are only the visible part of the equation. We need to talk about the fascinating micro-world beneath the surface. Soil hosts an incredibly complex ecosystem. Different microorganisms thrive at different depths. In the upper, oxygen-rich layers, you find aerobic bacteria. Deeper down, where oxygen is scarce, anaerobic microbes take over. Every single one plays a vital role in the overall process. When we plunge a shovel into the earth and turn over a sod, we initiate what amounts to a mass migration. We bury the aerobes deep down, where they quickly suffocate and perish. Conversely, we bring the anaerobes to the surface and expose them to fresh air, which is essentially toxic to them. We completely destroy a microbial balance that took years to establish. It's the equivalent of pulling deep sea creatures onto dry land, or throwing terrestrial animals into the deep ocean. The immediate result is a massive die-off of both populations. Restoring this delicate balance takes a significant amount of time, during which the soil essentially gets sick, and its natural functions are severely impaired. Let's listen once more to the proponents of tilling the soil. Their main selling point is the efficiency of fertilizer application. Fall is indeed the optimal time to enrich the soil with nutrients for the upcoming growing season. This is particularly crucial for slow-release organic amendments like manure, compost, or humus. If you simply scatter them on the surface, a significant portion of the nutritional content, especially nitrogen, will either escape, volatilize, or be washed away by meltwater runoff during the spring thaw. For these organic materials to become truly effective, they must be incorporated and mixed thoroughly with the earth. This is where proper digging or tilling becomes absolutely necessary. Tilling ensures the fertilizer is evenly distributed throughout the root zone, usually down to 20 or 30 centimeters. Throughout the winter and early spring, these amendments slowly begin to decompose. By the time you are ready to set out your seedlings, the soil will be a perfectly prepared, nutrient-rich layer cake, primed to sustain your plants all season long. This is classic agriculture, a time-tested technique developed and proven over decades. Let's take this a step further. This isn't just about organic matter though. In the fall, we also apply phosphorus and potassium mineral fertilizers. Phosphorus and potassium are immobile elements. If you just scatter them on the surface, they'll remain stuck in the top few millimeters of soil, and the roots of most plants simply won't be able to reach them. To make them accessible, they need to be delivered directly into the root zone. Tilling or digging the soil is the simplest and most effective way to achieve this. We apply the fertilizers, turn the soil over, and they end up exactly where they will be needed most come spring. Furthermore, fall tilling, combined with the addition of soil amendments like dolomite lime or garden lime, allows the soil acidity to normalize over the winter months. These substances also work slowly, and they require time to react properly with the soil. So tilling isn't just about aerating the ground. It's a vital operation for establishing a fertile layer at the necessary depth. But now, let's hear the powerful counter-argument coming from natural farming advocates. They assert that deep tilling doesn't actually preserve organic matter. Instead, it actively destroys it. How exactly does this happen? The soil's most valuable asset, its gold standard, is humus. Humus forms when organic material slowly breaks down in an environment where oxygen access is restricted. When we deeply turn over the soil, however, we suddenly and drastically saturate it with oxygen. This instantly provokes what scientists call a mineralization burst. Beneficial aerobic bacteria, suddenly supplied with this massive influx of oxygen, begin burning up the humus at an insane rate, rapidly decomposing it into simple mineral compounds. Yes, in the short term, this process provides a huge spike of readily available nutrients for the plants. But looking at the long term, we are rapidly depleting the soil's fertility. We are literally incinerating the organic reserves that took years to accumulate. The soil degrades, becoming poor and depleted, and its structure severely weakens. It's exactly like burning your life savings, your cash, just to get a quick moment of warmth. Following up on the topic of resource loss, let's focus on water. Those who oppose tilling argue that soil that has been dug up for the winter actually loses significantly more moisture. Why? Firstly, as we've mentioned, the capillary system, which naturally draws moisture up from the deeper layers, gets destroyed. Secondly, the large loose surface of tilled earth, especially if it's left in clods, dramatically increases evaporation due to winter winds and the spring sun. Bare, dark soil certainly warms up faster in the spring, but it also dries out much quicker. In contrast, soil that is left untouched since autumn and covered, for instance, with mulch or plant residues, acts like a thermos. It retains the moisture accumulated throughout the fall and winter. Come spring, the ground beneath this cover will be moist and vibrant, ready for planting without the need for extra watering. In regions experiencing dry springs, this can be the determining factor for a successful harvest. Ultimately, the tilling process, which is intended to conserve moisture, actually contributes to its loss. So, should we just hang up the shovel for good? Not so fast. There are specific instances where full tilling isn't just helpful, it's absolutely essential. The first scenario is breaking new ground or reclaiming virgin soil. If you've acquired a plot that is heavily overgrown with stubborn perennial weeds and has a deep, tough root system, skipping a thorough deep till simply isn't an option. You need to dedicate the time to turn those soil layers over completely, remove all the roots, and properly lay the foundation for your future garden beds. The second, and arguably most crucial situation, involves heavy, compacted, and prone to puddling clay soils. These soils have an extremely dense structure. They lack aeration and drain very slowly. If you neglect to turn this kind of earth over in the fall, come spring, you'll be dealing with an impassable mire, and by summer, it will bake solid into a concrete block. This is precisely why the technique of fall digging, leaving large, unbroken clods behind, was developed. Throughout the winter, water trapped inside the soil pores freezes, expands, and physically shatters these clods from the inside out. This process is commonly known as frost heave. By spring, this ground will be significantly looser, more workable, and much better structured. Conversely, there are certain soil types where autumn digging is absolutely the wrong approach. We are primarily talking about light, sandy, and sandy loam soils. These soils are naturally too loose and struggle to retain moisture and essential nutrients due to their low organic content. Tilling this type of soil only makes it more susceptible to crumbling, intensifying drying, and wind erosion. Any nutrients applied in the fall will simply be leached away by spring meltwater, settling in the lower layers inaccessible to plant roots. The only correct strategy for these soils is a no-till approach, constantly incorporating organic matter, like mulch and compost, to dramatically improve their water retention and fertility. Deep tilling is also strongly discouraged for rich, fertile Chernozems that already possess a perfect, established, granular structure. In these cases, the shovel can only cause harm, destroying the delicate, intricate structure that nature took centuries to perfect. So it seems the truth, as always, lies somewhere in the middle. Completely abandoning tillage might not work well for heavy clay soils, while obsessive annual deep digging is detrimental to lighter soils. What's the solution? A compromise. Instead of deep digging, a full spade depth, we can use shallow surface cultivation, perhaps just 2 to 3 inches deep. There are specific tools designed for this, such as the Fokins flat cutter or a simple hand cultivator. This technique loosens the top layer, takes care of weed seedlings, and helps incorporate cover crops or fertilizers. Crucially, it doesn't disturb the deeper soil structure and it protects earthworms and the essential microbial life. It's truly a golden mean because it captures the best of both worlds. We improve aeration in the surface soil while preserving the vital living structure underneath. This method is suitable for most soil types, and it serves as an excellent transitional step from conventional gardening toward more natural, ecological methods. Now let's talk about the most advanced alternative, the no-dig gardening method. The core principle behind this technique is simple, completely mimicking natural processes. Look at a forest floor. No one digs or tills the soil there, yet it remains perpetually loose, moist, and incredibly fertile. Why? Because it is constantly covered by a layer of fallen leaves, nature's own mulch. We can replicate this exact process in our own gardens. Instead of digging, we cover our beds with a thick layer of organic material, things like grass clippings, straw, fallen leaves, or compost. This protective layer shields the soil from drying out and erosion, significantly suppresses weed growth, and eventually, as it breaks down, it becomes food for worms and microbes, transforming directly into rich humus. Additionally, you can sow cover crops, often called green manures. Their roots naturally aerate and loosen the soil, and once they are cut down, the green mass itself becomes another layer of valuable mulch. While this approach requires a fundamental shift in mindset, in the long run, it creates a self-sustaining, incredibly healthy, and highly fertile soil ecosystem. Okay, let's quickly summarize the findings of our deep dive. As you've seen, there's simply no single definitive answer to the question, to dig or not to dig. And that really was the main takeaway. We've established that turning the soil, while powerful, is an incredibly crude tool. It can provide benefits like better aeration and help manage stubborn perennial weeds and pests, particularly in heavy clay environments. But the cost is significant. You destroy the soil's unique structure, kill off earthworms and beneficial microbes, wake up the sleeping weed seed bank, and lose precious humus in the process. Modern agricultural science is overwhelmingly favouring gentler methods, minimal or surface-only cultivation, and the increasingly popular no-dig approach, relying heavily on mulch and cover crops. The most crucial takeaway here is that we must stop blindly following old traditions and truly start understanding our specific piece of earth. Look at it, feel it, determine its type. Only then can you decide what it truly needs. A deep, surgical intervention with a spade, or gentle nurturing therapy using organic matter. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. I really hope this information was helpful for your gardening journey. Please remember to subscribe and hit that like button. Now, for the big question, after everything we've discussed, are you going to stay loyal to your shovel, or are you ready to try something new this autumn? Tell us about your soil type and your decision in the comments below.